Hi, my name is Tyler Johnson. I'm the Director of Operations for Sky Elements Drones. Today we're going to be going over some training material. We're so excited you're here with us. Ow, that hurt. Here's a glimpse of what you're going to be a part of. If at any time you want to revisit any of these items, just click on the links below. As part of today's production, you're all going to receive a call sheet. This call sheet's going to have the meet time, address, and approximate wrap time of today's event. It's important to check the call sheet for the weather conditions before you arrive on site. If it's going to be cold, make sure you've brought gear to keep you warm. If it's going to be hot, make sure you're wearing something that's not going to cause you to get overheated. Our camera team is always rolling. It's important that when you arrive to a drone show, we all look professional so that you and us can all look our best. It's important that once you arrive on site, everyone puts on an official Sky Elements vest. This is to make sure that we all look the same and we can identify our crew members versus other people here. There's a lot of work that goes into a drone light show. It all starts with unpacking the truck. It's important to remember that gear should be handled with care. Everyone is different. If you need help lifting something, ask. The Blue Eddy and pack out should always be lifted and carried by 2 people. No more than 1 full drone box should be carried at a time. Drone boxes should be stacked no more than 3 boxes high. Set up folding tables, ensuring that the legs are fully locked into place. Make sure to store the battery cans under the table so they're in the shade. Whenever we start setting up the base area, the crew lead will get a trash bag and install it on the handle of the pack out. It's important to make sure that any trash we find during the show is thrown away. When you're unboxing the drones, make sure to do it one at a time. You want to stack the box on top of another box so that the height is more towards your waist. You're going to start with undoing 3 sides of the box. Once you have 3 sides undone, we're going to unbox the drones one at a time. A few parts of the drones that you need to know. We have the battery door, we have the battery connector, we have the drone number, we have 4 motors with 4 propellers, and then we have this antenna, and we're going to revisit this antenna later. So before we stack the drones, there's a couple things we're going to check. The first thing is going to be to make sure that all the propellers are pointing in the right direction. You can see how they have a point here. It's important that in the middle, they're all pointing inside here. Then we want to set the drone on a flat surface. This is so we can check the propellers and the motors. You're going to want to give each propeller a spin and make sure it spins freely. After that, we're going to check the motors and propellers for tightness. You want to hold the motor lightly and see if the propeller moves at all. You're just doing a light wiggle. While you're doing this, you want to check and inspect the edges of the propellers for any damage. You're looking for missing tips and any indentions in the propeller along this front edge. If you're unsure about any damage, check with your crew lead. After you're done inspecting the drone, we're gonna stack it. So what you wanna do is you wanna make sure the battery door is facing out towards the edge of the table, and you wanna aim the propellers to where when you stack the next drone, it's not gonna interfere. Each one of these legs interlocks with the drone below it. It's important that when you stack it, all 4 corners line up and fit smoothly. When you pull out a drone, if it has any tape on it with any messages, it's important to give this drone to your crew lead and let them know that you found something with an extra label. Thank you, Lucas. The extra foam should always be placed in a designated area or back in the boxes. Today, we're gonna put them back in the truck. Remember, as you're stacking, it's important that you check that top drone for propeller tightness and any damage on the propellers, and to make sure that those propellers are all facing the same directions. Oh, we found one that's free spinning. We better give this to the crew lead to repair. Whenever you're done unloading a box, it's important that you reseal the box correctly with all 4 corners seated, and then stack the drone box out of the way. It's important that whenever you stack the drone box out of the way, you've cleared the location with your crew lead to make sure they are indeed out of the way. Again, remember, anytime you're stacking the drone boxes, they should be no more than 3 high. Especially when they're empty, the wind can catch them and blow them away. Once we get all of the drones on the table, the next step is going to be to install the batteries. Here's one of our battery cans. This tape should say charged or CH4 charged, and then the date it was charged. Whenever we go to open this can, we want to make sure it does have this tape on it. If it doesn't, check with your crew lead. Once we open the can, we're going to grab a few batteries and go ahead and put them in the drones. Let me show you a few things about our batteries. This is the front label of the battery with the battery information. This is the back side. The important things to remember, this is the balance lead with 5 wires. This is the charge lead with just the 2 wires, and it's a little bit heavier. You want to open the battery door, being careful of the propellers around you not to knock them into the legs. And then once again, battery label facing down, slide the battery into the drone. Once the battery's in the drone, you want to put your charge lead up and your balance lead down and close the door. You'll know the door's closed when it snaps. It's important that this lead's facing down so that it doesn't come in contact with the propellers. It's important that when you're carrying the batteries to carry no more than 2 in each hand. This makes sure that we never drop the batteries. Put the 4 batteries on the table and load the batteries one at a time. It's important that once the cans are empty and the last battery's been removed, that all tape is removed from the can to designate that there's no longer any charged batteries in that can. It's important to make sure if you put a charged battery back in the can that you replace a piece of tape that says charged and the date back on the can so that we know there's charged batteries in the can. Now's where the real fun begins. We're going to plug in a couple stacks of drones here and start the calibration process. This is what we like to call the drone dance. You'll know the drones are ready to calibrate whenever they start beeping. During the calibration process, you're going to want to do 2 drones at a time. You're going to want to grab the drones by the top, just like this, lift them carefully straight off the stack, and you're ready to start calibrating. Put the drone to your ear to make sure you hear the beeping noise. Once you know you hear the beeping noise, you're going to make figure 8s with the drones, just like this. While you're doing it, you want to make sure you spin around in circles to ensure that you're hitting all 3 axes of the drone. When you're calibrating the drones, you're looking for a very particular noise. That's the good noise. That means you've completed calibration. Whenever you hear the bad noise, that means the calibration is not complete and you need to redo the calibration. If you hear the bad noise 3 times in a row, it's important to go ahead and let your crew lead know. That way we can make sure there's not a larger issue with the drone. Once the drone is calibrated, we're going to put the drones out in the grid. While we're placing the grid, there's a couple things to watch out for. As always, you want to make sure you never walk on top of a cable. Always make sure you're stepping over them. We're going to have 4 wireless access points out in the grid that you also need to keep an eye out for. We need to make sure we don't trip over these. If you do, no worries, let your crew lead know so we can inspect the cables and make sure everything's okay. In addition to the Wi-Fi antennas, another thing to look out for is the RTK. This is one of our most important systems on the drone site. It is very important that at no times you interact with this device at all. If you bump it, step on any of the cables, please let your crew lead know immediately. Once again, no one's in trouble, but we need to make sure this system is running top-notch at all times. This is the pilot area. It's important that while we're getting the drone show ready, we let the pilot work and we don't disturb him unless the crew lead's unavailable and you need something immediately. Now we're ready to put drones in the grid. It's important to know that we use 2 different measurements here at Sky Elements. We either use a 1 meter spacing or 2 meter spacing. As you can see down here on the tape, we have meter marks. We have a 1 meter, and then over there we have a 2 meter. Remember that antenna I told you about earlier? This is where it becomes important. It's important that this antenna here on this drone is always parallel to the antenna at our command station. We're going to take the drone and place them in the grid. Whenever we do, we want to line up the leg on the point that we're trying to identify. In this case, it's the 0 point. After we do that, we want to make an H with the propellers, which means we're just going to parallel all the drones, the propellers together. Once we do this, you'll see all the points face in and it makes an H across the drone. This is to make sure that all of the propellers are in the right location and we have the right orientation on them. It's important to remember anytime you're walking through the grid to watch your step. Make sure you're not stepping on drones, kicking propellers. Also, always remember to step over cables, not on them. These are our radio headsets. Your crew lead may walk around and ask you to wear one of these. This is going to be so we can communicate with you throughout the rest of the show. To use the radio headset, you want to take the microphone and lean it down and then talk into it. Anytime it's down, either forwards or backwards, it's activated so that it can be worn on your right side or your left side. Once you have the radio on, you want to talk into the radio and confirm a radio check. So I'm going to ask my team members, radio check?
Radio check confirmed.
Now, we're ready to move into the next phase of the drone setup. Now that all the drones are plugged in, the pilot will start his inspections to make sure all of the drones are working correctly. Here are a couple things that he may need us to do. Number one is power cycling the drone. Sometimes they're not connected to the network properly, or it may just be having a sensor malfunction. The first step is going to be to power cycle that drone on the pilot's request. Secondly, a drone may need help readying up. We'll go over this process shortly. Thirdly, this drone may need a new battery. If so, the pilot will tell you that it needs a new battery. We'll go over that process as well. In this case, this drone just needs a quick power cycle. We'll come down here without lifting the drone off the ground, unplug him, count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Plug him back in, always making sure that the battery door is closed and listening for those noises. Once again, if we hear anything but that noise, let your crew lead or pilot know, as there may be a bigger issue with the drone. The pilot just told me this drone needs a new battery. Just like when we installed the battery the first time, it's really important that we do this properly. You're going to start by unplugging the current battery, opening the door, and then grabbing the battery by the body, sliding it out and putting it out of the way. Then you want to take the new battery, label down, making sure the balance lead is down and the charge lead is up. You want to close the door, once again listening for that click. After that, you're going to go ahead and plug the drone back in again. Go ahead and take your old battery and stand up and wait for further instructions from your pilot. Our pilot just came over the radio and told us this drone needs to be swapped. I'm going to pick up this drone here and go ahead and unplug it. One of my fellow crew members is walking over from the table with a drone already plugged in. That way, as soon as it's ready, the pilot can get it added into the network. Thank you. You can see this drone is already plugged in. We want to go ahead and set it down the same way in the grid, making sure that the propellers make the H again, batteries plugged in, battery door shut, making sure that all of my propellers are aimed in. It's important that we stay by this drone until the pilot gives us the all clear so that we can make sure that whatever the problem was has been resolved.
Clear the grid.
The pilot just gave us the all clear. We'll go ahead and get on out of here. Now that the pilot has told us the show's ready to go, we're going to plug in all the drones. We're going to walk over here and show you guys how to do that now. It's important to remember as you're walking through the grid, watch out for cables and other objects. We're going to start by plugging in the drone. It's important that when you go to plug in the drone, we plug in the drone and check the battery door. Check the location of the propellers again, looking for that H we've talked about several times. Now we're each going to pick a row and walk down our row and make sure they're all plugged in. During the show, we'll need each of you to be a part of securing our perimeter to make sure everyone is safe during the show. You need to be back on the edges of the show. Your crew lead will tell you exactly where to be. It's important that while you're observing the outer perimeter of the show, to keep your head on a swivel looking for anyone that's entering our perimeter. Excuse me, sir. We're flying a drone light show here. Would you mind going around the other direction? Thank you so much. It's important that after the drones touch down, to stay clear of the grid until we get the all clear from the pilot.
Drones are down, grid is safe.
Now we can safely re-enter the grid. Let's go pack up some drones. What we're gonna do is we're each gonna take a row and we're gonna unplug and count our way across. In this demonstration, we should expect to have 5 drones per row. So as they're going, they're gonna be counting the number of drones they have. If they get to the end and they have all 5, they're gonna let their crew lead know that all drones are accounted for. If they get to the end and they don't, they're gonna let me know that they're missing one. Lucas, how did the row end up?
We're missing one.
Thank you so much for telling me. Let's go figure out why. This is obviously just a demonstration. If you ever get to the end of your row and you're missing one, let your crew lead know so we can get to the bottom of what's happening. Now that all the rows are unplugged, we're gonna start stacking the drones. Remember, it's important that when you're stacking the drones to make sure that all the propellers are out of the way before you stack them. Make sure all the battery doors are facing the same direction. It's easiest if you leave the stack of drones in place and bring the drones to you in order to stack them. Once you've got a stack of 6 drones, we're going to carry those stacks over to the table. It's important when carrying drone stacks to have one hand on the bottom and one hand on the top. If you can't carry all 6 drones, that's okay. Carry 3 at a time, still with one hand on the bottom, one hand on the top. Once we get back to the table, make sure to have the battery doors facing out. This will make it easier when we're putting the batteries back in the cans. Now that all the drones are out of the grid, we're going to remove all the batteries from the drones. It's important to remember to watch out for the propellers and not knock them into the legs. You're going to open the battery door and grab the battery by the body, not the leads, pull it out and set it to the side, and undo the whole row of drones. It's important to remember, whenever you remove the battery, always reclose the battery door. Now we're going to put the batteries back in the can. It's important to remember that we only put 2 batteries in each hand. When putting the batteries back in the can, you want to start by making sure that there's no tape on the outside of the can and removing all the back tape. Then you want to take the batteries and place them in the can. It's important to make sure that the battery leads are always aimed to the inside, like this. You have one aimed to the inside, one aimed to the inside. And we're going to pack the entire can like this. Now that the batteries are all back in the can, it's time to seal the can. It's really important when we're sealing the can to make sure that all the wires are on the inside of the can so that we don't catch them with these walls here and pinch any of the batteries. But all the wires are inside the can. Grab the lid, pull it over, and then push down the latch. Now that all the batteries have been removed, it's time to put the drones back in the boxes. Whenever you're doing this, it's easiest to get the propellers straight, grab them by the propellers, and drop them straight into the foam. Once it's in the foam, you take it and you place it in the bottom of the box and move on to the next one. Now that the drone box is full, it's time to seal the lid. It's important that when you're sealing the lid, you pay a lot of attention to the corners. The corners have to be fully seated down. You want to pull down on the side Velcro and wrap the front one around. Now that the drone box is full, we're going to move it out of the way so we can keep packing up. Remember, drones should never be stacked more than 3 boxes high. Thank you so much for joining us for training today. If you have any questions, refer to your call sheet or reach out to your crew lead or production manager. Remember, at Sky Elements, safety's first. Have a safe flight.